Well, hello, friends. So good to see you again today.
Oh, it's good to see you too, so close before Christmas.
Isn't that the truth? Yes. So that brings us to our subject today. You want to talk about Christmas and specifically people who are dreading Christmas. Why don't you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, you know, I guess it's the elephant in the room. Because everybody's like, oh, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. What are you doing? Are you having family? Are you doing all of that? And yet, if you really talk to people, you'll find out that not, there are a lot of people that are not looking forward to Christmas for one reason or another. And I didn't know that. I thought that was just me, and it's circumstantial. It's really circumstantial, and I'll get into that later. But there are a lot of people that dread Christmas, and the word they use is dread. So yeah, I'm bringing this up because I think the other people need to understand that they are not alone. That Christmas is something that is not the holly jolly season for many people.
You're
Mhm.
so right. And I was, when you told me what you want to talk about today, I was like, yay. Um, and by now you know that I always bring up examples from my own life. So I became a single mom in 2003 and my kids were really, really young. And it was the first time in since being a mother that I was alone. Oh my goodness. I still think of those absolute dreadful feelings. And with that was also financial issues. You're expected to give gifts. And to me, that was a big deficit in my life. I could not just go out, even for teachers at school, and buy even a $10 gift. I got into the habit of baking, and it became quite a tradition in my life because that's one thing I can do. I can bake. But still, we hear the movie music. It's the most wonderful time of the year. And yeah, you know what? Not everybody thinks that. And even hearing Christmas music here in North America starting very early, sometimes October, November after Remembrance Day, it's just in your face, Christmas lights. And yes, I get it. I totally get it. It's not always the happiest time of the year.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's a lot of reasons for that, right?
Right.
We know that we're in COVID years here, so whatever our Christmas used to be is different. So that's one reason, but there's a lot of other ones that I'm going to go into, and I will have a couple of ideas at the end of how we can um, manage that, right? Um, it's a sad, it's a sad time of year for a lot of people. And you mentioned being a single parent and not having the money. So the first thing I'm going to address is the idea of the presence under the tree that is so, massive amounts of presents. And so I'm going to tell you a little story about a person who's very dear to me. And she had mentioned that she had watched my anxiety video and she really liked it. And I said, oh, good, because you might really like the Dreading Christmas podcast that we're going to be doing next week. Well, she went on a rant. She went on a real rant about, the commercialism of Christmas, and it's all done by marketing and companies that want to sell their stuff so that landfills get full of stuff, and children have so much stuff that there's no room to walk on the floor and there's wrapping paper all over. And it was a real rant. And I sat back and I'm like, wow, I had no idea, because this person, I would spend Christmas with her, and I had no idea that she felt that way. But in the meantime, in the last couple of years, her husband passed away.
Mm.
And so her Christmas is no longer the Christmas that she had once. And she did mention in this big long essay that she wrote me that we should be giving money to the poor and we should be helping the homeless and the needy and all of that stuff. And I agree for sure. So I mentioned what kinds of charities do you don't donate to at Christmas time? And she mentioned one, which is great. And I think a lot of us do that. We donate to charities at Christmas time. But I really started to thinking about what triggered her. And trigger is an important word, because there was something that I said in my 2 sentences that I had written her that triggered her. And I think it was expectations, right? Expectations of what we think the Christmas should be, what it's supposed to look like. And you talked about that already. We expect people to, well, sometimes we expect to get certain things from people, and we don't. We expect people to have a certain look up on their faces when they open the gift that we might have spent a lot of time trying to think about what to get. We might have spent a lot of effort. We might have spent a lot of money. And when they open that gift and you're looking at the look on their face, you don't get the look that you want. And so there's expectations. And of course, this year, there's the expectations of what Christmas is supposed to look like with family and friends. And it doesn't, because we're still in that COVID situation where only a certain amount of people can get together. Now, as for me, as you know, I come from a very large family. Our Christmases tend to be, before these 2 years, huge. When my mom was still alive, her very last year, there were over 100 people. And it got to the point where we would have to rent a community hall. We would have this big Christmas at a community hall. And it was wonderful, of course. You had a big buffet. Everybody would bring the food that they created, their specialty. And you would have long talks, and kids were running around, and there's music, and it's wonderful. And then, mom passed away. So the thing gets different. It changes, and then changes and changes. And as the families get more fractured, because children grow up, grandkids grow up, they start having their own children, things start getting fractured. And then there's, that's in-laws Christmas this year. And this year we're going to those parents for Christmas. And this year we're just leaving the country because it's too cold. Or this year we're doing whatever. And everything starts to get fractured. And those of us that continue to get older, the people that we had our Christmases with are no longer there. And it's hard. Change is hard. And so we have those types of expectations. I was talking to another friend and I asked her, what do you, I'm going to do this topic on dreading Christmas. What do you think? What are your ideas about it? And she said, Fran, I hate Christmas. And I was shocked, right? I was shocked. And I'm like, you hate Christmas? Why? And she talked about her own children and how torn they are, because now they have a significant other and they have to decide where they're going for Christmas. And it causes anxiety for them because they don't want to hurt anybody. They don't want to hurt mom. They don't want to hurt husband's or partner's mother. They don't want anybody to get hurt. But people get hurt. Oh, you're not coming home for Christmas? Logically, I understand. Well, you can't, you have to do that. But the emotions, right? We know that emotion trumps logic. My baby's not going to be home for Christmas. What? Christmas is not going to be the same without you here. And so the changes that go along with as we get older are big. And I think we try to hook an anchor to something from the past. And so when I think about the past, the first thing that I think of at Christmas time are my own family Christmases on the farm when I was a kid. And it would be traditional that we would all get up, we would open our presents. We had one present, and sometimes there would be a group present to 3 girls, right? Because there's 3 that are almost the same age. So there'd be a group present to us, but that would be it. But you'd look so much forwards to it. And just having the lights and Dad putting up the great big, the thing with lights on top of the roof, and cold and quiet and skidooing outside and all of those things that went along with Christmas. You get tethered to that idea that that's what Christmas is supposed to look like. Christmas is supposed to be on December 25th. Christmas is supposed to be, you go to Christmas Eve Mass, you go at midnight. I'm Catholic. That's what we did. We would go to grandma's, we would have that meal, we would sit around for hours, and eventually we'd get up and go to Christmas midnight Mass. And we'd sit there and we'd leave and we'd go home and we'd wait expectantly for the morning. So we get tethered to these ideas of what it's supposed to be like. And then as an adult, it changes. It's just not that anymore. And so those happy memories of childhood, we don't no longer have. So we have to create our own memories, which don't always turn out the way we hoped.
So do you think, Fran, that everything, as I'm listening to you, the idea that is forming in my head, that I think what is getting people more emotionally about Christmas is that it emphasizes change. Life is not the same as it was as a child anymore. There's constant change. And you mentioned something, it made me think of my own situation this year. My younger son lives on the east side of the country, we're out west, and he couldn't come home for Christmas last year, but this year he's coming over here on Monday. And he expressed to me a lot of stress around Christmas because I am divorced from his father. I remarried. So there's 2 Christmases that he has to do here. And then his partner's parents both are divorced and remarried. So he said, Mom, do you remember the movie, The 4 Christmases? I'm like, yeah. I said, that's our Christmas. So anyway, it just made me think, like everything you say, it's change, it's memories, it's almost regret sometimes that you don't have that ideal Christmas. And then another thought, as you're talking, I'm thinking, how many people do I know today who really, really love Christmas? I don't think there are that many. And then I want to bring up another point, Fran. In Canada specifically, we have an extremely large multicultural society. And because I'm a singer and I do a lot of Christmas music, that's something that you become more and more aware of as you go to big events, that we have to consider everybody. And not everybody in our country today feel the way traditionally people do about Christmas. In the last few years, because I made a wonderful friend from East Indian descent, I've been celebrating Diwali, which is just a beautiful celebration. So, and they celebrate Christmas, but it does not have the same traditional meaning that it would have for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so I want to touch a little bit on, because children are dear to my heart, right? Like I worked up right until yesterday, and the day before Christmas holidays is always special. We always do special things at school. And so myself, I have really good memories of Christmas as a child. I do. I really have tender memories that I hold on to. But there are so many children that do not have good Christmases. And there's that expectation because, oh, it's all of this Christmas hype and everybody's talking about writing the letter to Santa, because that's a tradition. We write, not me, but children write letters to Santa, and they, especially if they write them from school, which often happens, and the teachers, I remember doing this as a teacher of really young kids, you try to pare it down. It's like, you're allowed to ask for one thing, but you mostly talk about the reasons you should get a Christmas present because of the wonderful things you've been doing this year, right? You have to express gratitude for others, and you have to say how you were a good girl. So children get this idea that Santa is going to provide a Christmas like this for me. That's an expectation. And then they don't get that for whatever reason. There are lots of addictions. And I mean, my family was not rich. By any means, we were not rich. And yet I know that my parents had the food on the table, and we had the roof over our head, and the lights weren't turning off, and there was going to be heat in the house, right? And we also always had our siblings. So we had our siblings in case mom and dad were mad, we would join together and we would be a united force. We always had that. But if your parents are unreliable, if there's dysfunction in the family, and I didn't understand this until I was a young teacher. And I know many schools do this. Many schools collect food, they collect money, they collect donations to provide hampers for very needy families within their school. And so we contribute, the other kids in the school contribute the can of corn and the rest of that kind of stuff. And so 2 or 3 days before Christmas holiday starts, we send like 8 boxes of food to each of these very needy families. 8 boxes. There's a turkey, there's everything you would need to have a wonderful Christmas. There's presents, there's everything. So my VP of the school, he used to participate in delivering, right? And so I never thought, right? So he was telling us what it was like to deliver these Christmas hampers. So he told about one time that he had these, big, lots of boxes of food, and he goes to a mobile home, a trailer, in a trailer park, rundown, a rundown trailer, rickety steps. He goes, he knocks on the door, somebody opens the door, they got a cigarette, the cigarette's half hanging off, lots of ash on the end of the cigarette. The door opens, there's the mom and little kid running around with a soggy diaper, no clothes on, really messy house, dirty. On the table is a bunch of beer bottles that are tipped over, cigarette ashtrays overflowing. That's right before Christmas. And he brings these boxes in, and you can see on the mother's face, it's just thankfulness, like just incredible thankfulness, but also humiliation, shame, guilt, just that myriad of emotions, right? And there are children that grow up in this, and without a doubt of a lie, Marina, these kids never, ever talk about what their house is like, ever. You never know that as a teacher. Sometimes they talk to their counselors, sometimes they talk to very close friends, but it's kept a secret. Teachers, very, very few teachers know how bad it really is. We know that the kids might come to school dirty, without a lunch, homework not done, that kind of stuff. But children are so good at hiding that the sadness, right? Children are so good at hiding the sadness, but they get tethered to those feelings of what Christmas looked like when they were a kid. And so these kids grow up to be adults, and they can go either of two ways, right? They can say, I will never do that to my own kids, and they will shower their own kids with incredible amount of gifts. And sometimes they can't afford that, and sometimes maybe they do, but an incredible amount of gifts. Or they follow that same pattern and they become that same person who provides that kind of Christmas. And so the dread of Christmas, there are young people that dread Christmas because they don't know what's going to happen. if they come from a dysfunctional family, there could be all kinds. I'm in a 12-step program. I'm in an Al-Anon program. So I know that Christmas is a time of drinking, and that's what Al-Anon people are used to. They're used to somebody being out of control on Christmas, or some type of expectation that's like done. Christmas is like party and drinking until there's fights, until there's chaos, until somebody falls asleep and leaves a candle burning. And there's all kinds of stuff that happens on Christmas when there's an addiction in the household. So I talked to a couple more friends last night, give me your ideas on Christmas. And she came from a Catholic family as well. And so she remembers as a child, her dad being an alcoholic. And she just wished so bad that her dad wouldn't drink on Christmas Eve. She just wished so bad he wouldn't drink so that he could come to church with a family. And it never happened. By the time midnight rolled around, the dad had been long passed out in the chair, right? Long passed out. And the mom would gather up all these children, big Catholic family, and they would go to church and they would take up two pews. And mom was always there, but there would never be a dad. And she felt that everybody in the whole church knew why the dad never showed up, that he was passed out again in the chair. And then there's often physical abuse in households where there's addictions. So how can a person who grew up that way really ever trust Christmas?
It's very interesting, Fran, because my head is just going to our rapid transformational training, and how as a child, what we really long for is acceptance, love, constant praise, and and it just brings up so many emotions and thoughts in me when you tell that story of the kids in the trailer park. And you have to wonder, were they emotionally taken care of? Physically is one thing, but emotionally, and you're so right. Children, and that's what they know, right? And they will hide it, and they won't always know that there's something different out there until they grow older and start to compare themselves. But then I want to ask you, Fran, so if somebody comes to you who dreads Christmas, what would you tell them? How would you help them?
I would first say, let's talk about why you're dreading it. What is it about Christmas that you're dreading? Because there's all these reasons, right? There's so many different reasons. I didn't even touch on the fact that there's the expectations on the part of the parent to see the look on the child's face when they open this gift and the child says, "This sucks." This is, they don't like the present that you tried so hard for them to like. And then there's the anxiety around not providing for your children what you want to give them, and you can't give them because you can't afford it. But there's just so much. So if we can find out, what is it that you really dread about Christmas? Let's find out. Maybe it is the fact that there were addictions in your household. Let's talk about that. What happened? Can we talk about that? Yeah. And you know it as well as I do. Just talking about it helps to share the pain. Just talking about it, talking it through, and someone saying, "I get it. I understand. I get it."
I love what we do. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I love what we do in RTT, where we actually go into the subconscious mind and find out what exactly was the root cause of those negative emotions around Christmas, and come up with better stories. We were talking earlier about neuro-linguistic programming, and part of what we do is making that beautiful, uplifting, positive recording that can change people's outlook so easily.
Yeah. And finding out, and as you mentioned that, we find that root cause, that child or that young mom who was traumatized by all these beer bottles on the table or whatever. We find that scene and we talk to that person within the scene, and we gently and caringly and kindly help them through it so that they can heal. At that point, they can heal that part of their lives. They can say to themselves, that was me, but that's no longer me. That is no longer me. That was me at one time in my life, but I am now 59 years old. I am now capable and confident, and I am strong, and I am no longer that child at the whim of an abusive alcoholic. I am no longer that human. I am strong, and I am loved and cared for.
Right.
Yeah. You know, one thing that we can do is to work that person through an acronym. And an acronym, and the acronym is SOBER, SOBER, SOBER. And it's not even about drinking, alcoholism, addictions, but it could be. That's what SOBER means as an acronym, to help others through, or even ourselves, if we can take ourselves through this so that we don't get triggered. S is for just think about it, just to stay silent, to say nothing, to stay silent, to look at it, to see it for what it is. O is to observe. Well, how am I acting? What do I see? Observing. B, to breathe. Let's just breathe. Let's just calm down. Let's just breathe. E is to look at our emotion. What am I feeling? Am I feeling anxiety? Am I feeling guilt? Am I feeling shame? Am I feeling bitterness, resentment? Am I feeling anger? What emotion am I feeling? And then the response comes, because I think too often we tend to put the R first. So when I was talking to that very dear friend of mine who gave me a big rant about commercialism of Christmas and how we should be giving money to the poor instead of buying all this stuff made in China that's going to end up in a landfill after, my first go-to, because I was triggered, my first go-to was to back off, was to, there's fight, flight, fight, or flee, right? Or freeze. And I was going to flee because it's like, you're crazy. I don't want to get involved in this. I was going to flee. But that was my reptile brain. So my conscious, logical thinking brain, in tune with, holy cow, there's so much more here than what meets the eye. She's triggered. I have to keep myself from being triggered by her trigger. So to really just stay silent with it and see it for what it is, this big long rant that's, scroll, finding the end of this conversation about what she's saying had nothing to do with Christmas. It has to do with something that triggered her. So then let's observe it. Okay, well, if I can read between the lines here, she's really passionate about what she's saying. And then B, breathe. Don't answer yet, Fran. Breathe. Ready? No. Back up. Take all those words out of that text message. If you were going to write, not time yet. Just push send. Just keep on breathing, Fran. Okay. Take another good look at it. What emotion is going on there? The emotion that's going on for her is sadness. Oh, okay. This changes things. The emotion is sadness. Okay, let's think this through. What's my emotion? My emotion is being triggered by somebody who is making, I think is making fun of me, or I think is making me feel like I'm going to be stupid, or I'm going to say something dumb or whatever. That's my trigger, but her trigger wasn't that. Her trigger was sadness about the longing for the way Christmases used to be when her husband was still alive. And then I responded. So I responded with 2 sentences. I can tell you're very passionate about this. What organizations do you contribute to? And so she had another long rant, but then she mentioned the Salvation Army, and then another long rant. So let's go through sober again. Stay silent and take a look at it, see it, observe it, breathe. What's my emotion? I'm still being triggered by what she just said, all that long rant. What's her emotion? Protection. She's trying to protect herself. And then the R. How do I respond? I responded by connecting to her emotion. So I didn't respond logically. I responded by connecting to her emotion, which connected her with happy memories of Christmas. So I said, oh, I remember when you and your husband used to come for Christmas. I remember how you would always open your stockings, and he would always put an orange, one of those easy peel oranges in the toe of your stocking. And then you would open something from your stocking. He would open something from his. One time she pulls out a rubber chicken, like there's a rubber chicken in her stocking. And he pulls out something really sweet and cool out of the stocking that she made for him. And it's just beautiful. So I reminded her of these happy memories that she had. And Marina, it was incredible. She calmed down. She went from there talking about commercialism, talking about the media, talking about marketing, talking about way too much money spent on Christmas, talking about losing the real meaning of Christmas. Down, she came way down. And she had like 2 sentences. Yeah, Pete really used to love the stockings. Okay, I got it. Now I know what's going on here. Now I understand you. But if I had done the first thing, which was to respond or flee and not talk to her for another month, it wouldn't have done too much good at all.
I'm always reminded of something that I had to go through in my life, and that is, in all circumstances, happiness is a choice. We cannot expect Christmas to bring happiness back into our lives, but we can also not allow it to steal it from us. So in my history after my divorce, on those lonely Christmas days or Christmas Eves when I did not have my kids, it was alternating every year, I would find other people who were lonely, people who didn't have kids, were not married, people who went through divorces, people whose spouse just passed away. And I would invite them. I would open my house. And that's one way that I could give. And that gave me joy. That gave me pleasure. Once I went to volunteer at a homeless shelter on Christmas Day. And that was a different experience for me as well, just making this, or contributing to serving people a turkey dinner who are normally living on the streets. So consciously changing the meaning of something, consciously deciding that I'm going to put the fullness of pleasure into every situation, even though it's not the same as it used to be when I could have a lot of pleasure in it. Change is a constant. Change is an absolute constant. You're not going to have the perfect year over and over and over again.
No, and I think it's a lot about expectations. What are you expecting? And to lower our expectations and to admit that life is messy. Mm-hmm. We are messy people. Life is messy. Everybody's messy. It's not just our family, it's everybody's family. There's something. You and I know that. Everybody's family has something, some trauma, some hidden secret, something that creates sadness, resentment, bitterness, just dread, there's dread. And so those families that can't get together on Christmas Day because of, for whatever reason, it is really just a day. It's just a day. It's December 25th. And yeah, the media has placed a lot of emphasis on December 25th. Last year, a very good friend of mine, because of COVID, they couldn't get together with their children at all. And so they moved their Christmas to July. They had Christmas in July, and they kept their presents there. And in July, when they could meet outside with social distance, you know, like they could actually get together as a family outside, they had their Christmas in July. Is it Christmas? Absolutely. It's still Christmas. It's still getting together with friends and family. It's still having the love. It's still giving and sharing and gratitude, giving gratitude to each other, and the feeling, the emotion of love, right? It's all about love and just expressing gratefulness. You know, the original reason that we have Christmas is to acknowledge the birth of Christ. Well, he, you know, like, and then, yeah, it did get so distorted. But what do we create for ourselves? What do we create? How are we changing to make it good for us? Because yeah, we can continue to have the floor full of Christmas presents and Christmas wrapping paper, and then there's the kids playing with the box. So there they are playing with the box instead of all the expensive stuff that came in the box. Or we can change the story, and we can change the meaning for ourselves, and we can start paring down, and we can start bringing the meaning back, the gratefulness and the togetherness and the giving to others without an expectation in return of how this is supposed to look like, whether it's the look on their face, or whether it's the gifts in return, or whether it's how everything is supposed to be perfect because Christmas is supposed to be perfect. How about how we take away any expectations of what it's supposed to be and just be instead of supposed to in the front. Let's just be for Christmas, and let's let God, the universe, the creator, Christ, work magic. Let him work magic instead of us trying to control it to the point where everybody's upset and everybody ends up dreading Christmas.
It's like focus on the positive and maybe brainstorm things that you are grateful for on Christmas morning.
Why
instead of
don't we?
everything we hate about it, right?
Yeah, I love your idea of having a different cultural tradition.
Yeah.
One year, because it was the COVID year and we had to pare down a little bit, I guess it was last year, or maybe the year before, when I couldn't have my kids home for Christmas. What I did do was later, when I did see my kids, we made a multicultural meal. It wasn't the big turkey, because who's going to eat that big honking turkey when there's only 5 of us, right? So we made a multicultural meal. The places that I had traveled to in the last 5 years, I contacted people from those countries that I got to know and asked them to send me a special food that they eat at this time of year, and they did. It was awesome. We had wonderful food. We had food from Nepal and food from Scotland and food from Turkey, and it was great.
Fantastic.
And yeah, it was different, and it wasn't your traditional, pies and cakes and all of that kind of stuff in Turkey. It was different and good.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, Fran, fantastic. Thank you for bringing this very important subject up today, very timely. And I'm pretty sure that there will be a lot of people that will be able to relate to this today. So thank you for guiding us through this. And so any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
I guess my last thoughts would be that everyone who watches this, that that know you're watching it for a reason, that there's a purpose that you're here, that the timing was perfect. The timing that you watched this video was perfect. It was meant to be. And know that you're in my heart and that I'm there for you, even though I'm on the other side of the screen. And you might think it's just all whatever, Fran, what do you know? You're in my heart. And I pray that each and every one of you feels joy this Christmas in whatever way that comes to you, and that you feel peace in your heart, a peace surpassing all understanding. That's what I pray for you. And for you too, Marina. I pray that for you too.
Thank you. So we will talk next week about New Year's.
Yeah, New Year's.
Yeah. Well, have a wonderful week, everybody, and we will see you next time.